What's up, everybody? So today in the shop we have my daily driver, 2001 Chevy S10 two-wheel drive with the V6. We're going to be doing front rotors and pads. I finished this side already. You probably can't tell, but this side had a bad wheel speed sensor, so I did the backing plate and everything too. But I'm going to kind of do like a how-to on this side. I'm sure there's a million other people that are going to say, oh, I do it this way, this way. This is just how I do it. So to start off, we have wherever. There's your part number, 145241. Rotor, it comes with the races, pre-pressed in. Both sides. And then we got the wherever platinum pads. It's only one side because I already did the other side. And then I always like to use Nationals wheel seals and bearings. Let me get you. There's your part number. You don't have to do the platinums. It's just, that's just what I use on most of my stuff. So I went ahead and got them for this too. So you got your seal for the back side of your hub, rotor, whatever you want to call it here. Part number 4739. And then this is your inner bearing. National bearing A6. And this is your outer bearing, the smaller one. National bearing A34. And then I figured I'd kind of show what tools I'll be using. So this is to get the caliper off, because it's got the Allen heads. Just a 3/8 ratchet with a 3/8 Allen head. And then this is for your castle nut. I used 1 16" deep socket. It doesn't really matter, but it's just what I had. Dikes for getting the cotter pin out. Screwdrivers to get your little grease cap off. Hammer for putting in the seal. And sometimes you gotta tap on the screwdrivers to get that grease cap off. You don't have to have an impact gun. This is just a Milwaukee with a 19 for taking the wheel on and off. And then I'll use a snap-on 1/2 inch tech angle to torque the wheel when I'm done. Just a little C-clamp to compress the caliper, and then just a bucket of grease for the bearings. Well, let's get started. I kind of just assumed nobody would want to watch me take the wheel off, but here it is. Here's the squeak I've been hearing. I mean, the pad still had a good bit of life, but you can hear it. So now what you're going to want to do is take your ratchet with your 3/8 Allen. Stick it in the bolt hole. Get that broke loose. You get your bottom one broke loose. Pull them out. We'll be back in a second. So at this point, you got your 2 bolts out. And then I like to just hang the caliper off this little brake line bracket with a zip tie. Just keep it back out of the way, and that way you're not hanging and straining your brake line. So now what you're going to do is take your screwdrivers, pop this cap off. So now that you got your cap off, you'll notice you have a cotter pin here, castle nut, there's a washer behind, and then directly behind the washer is your outer bearing. So what you're going to do, you're going to get your dikes, bend out your cotter pin. You can use whatever ply. I just prefer dikes. It's a little easier for me. It's just what I'm used to. It's an all preference thing. Push him up a little. It's hard to do one-handed. With the dikes you can grab it and really kind of twist it out. And then you have him out. Now you're going to take socket, loosen your castle nut up. It's normally kind of finger tight to begin with. I just always start with the ratchet and socket anyway. So then what I'll do is I'll get this off. And even though it's kind of a simple design, I still take this, put it in there like that. I'll grab the washer. Usually the bearing will be stuck to it and kind of come out with it a little bit. That's why you saw the hub move a little. And sometimes you gotta kind of slide it out some. And I'll take it and lay it exactly the direction it was facing. Then I'll take this bearing out and I'll just set it to the side because we're not going to reuse that. And then let me set the tripod up. Now we just slide this off. And let me just lay it right here. And you can see you got your bearing, your seal. And then that way you can bring your new one over here and kind of build your new one based off of what you see on this one. So like looking at this, you'll see bearing goes in first, seal holds the bearing in. Get you a closer look. Yeah. So I went ahead and pre-packed the bearings off camera, then just laid everything out, bearing, seal. I brought the new rotor over and I'm going to start to assemble it. What you want to do is take your larger inner bearing, slide it in there, and then just put your seal in. And if you look at the old seal, grab a rag and wipe it off. You can see, okay, so it's flat here, the metal comes down, then you got your rubber seal. So that's gonna tell you. Okay, I'm gonna take the new one. It comes in, metal down to the rubber seal. If you look at it this way, it's hollow. So you want this side facing in. It'll end up going on that way. So I usually use a seal driver kit, but for the video I'm just going to take a little piece of 2x4 and do it that way for some of the guys that are doing this at home and don't really have, you know, all the money to just kind of waste on tools they'll use once every couple of years. So I'm going to go ahead and throw the bearing in. I'll put the seal in. I'll show you what it looks like when the seal's in, the bearing's in. And then we'll put it on. We'll put the front bearing in and assemble everything back together. Okay, so bearing's in, seal's in. When you hit the seal in, you'll want to just set your block of wood on there. Hit it just gently once. Just kind of go around it, make sure it's starting to go in even. And just work it in evenly. When you're done, it should be nice and smooth, nice and flat and even. So we slid it on, set our little outer bearing on. And then what you're going to do is you're going to take the washer that you laid in this cap with the castle nut. And this goes on a certain way. It's got a little keyway. You slide that in. Take your castle nut. And here comes the controversial part. Some people swear by torquing it to a certain amount. Some people swear by doing the spin and tighten and back it off a quarter turn, put your pin in. I was always showed the spin it as you tighten it to seat your bearings and everything, your seal. So you're gonna spin it. They say frontwards. Some people say both ways. I was taught frontwards. Spin it, and you're going to get your socket and your ratchet or your wrench, whatever you got, and tighten this as you go until it comes to a stop or gets very, very hard to turn. Depending on who you ask, you hear both ways. And then I was taught just back it off until you can get the pin in. So we'll do it that way. I'm sure there's a bunch of people that'll tell you a million different ways. That's the way I've taught. I haven't had a wheel fall off, so I think it works. This is the way I do it. Spin it, tighten it a little, spin it, tighten it a little, spin it, tighten it. I normally like to keep the ratchet where it's somewhat level, where I'm kind of just putting a little weight just to tighten it. Not going crazy, just a little bit at a time. Just let everything work in. Tighten it. So you go through the process of getting your castle nut tight. Get your cotter pin back in. I normally just fold the little legs up into there. It should spin pretty free. Now that you went through the process of spinning and tightening, and then backing off, everything should be seated nice and tight, and you can move on to compressing the caliper so you can get your new pads in, and we'll show you that process next. So you'll want to use your old pad like that. I mean, they make all kinds of different compressors. I just use a C-clamp just because I already have a bunch of them. Leave your old pad in there, get your clamp on there, get your foot on the back side of the caliper, and just slowly twist it in nice and easy. And it should compress the caliper, and you can pull that pad out and slide your new ones in. Now you should be ready to put your pads in. You got it compressed and you're ready to go. So you might run into an issue like I had, where over time, as the pads got low, somebody put too much brake fluid in it, because as the pads were working, it was using more fluid. And as I compressed it and pushed all that fluid back through, it blew through the cap of the master. So it should be all right. You have this should be your inner pad and your outer pad. So this one, the way it's going to go on your little spring piece, clips back into the piston of the caliper, and I'll show you once it's on. So let me throw that on and be right back. So here's that one in. The lighting sucks, but my little piece is clipped in there. And then your other one just kind of literally just slides on. It doesn't have any springs, anything. It just sits there. It's kind of a weird design, but I'll throw that one on. I'll show you it. And we'll slide the caliper back on and bolt everything up, and we should be good to go. So there's that one, pretty much just sitting on there, kind of almost freely, really. And then we'll slide the caliper back on. Should be able to spin it. I ain't gonna be able to do it one-handed. These pads fall out the way they're. It's gonna take you two hands to put the caliper back on. So we slid the caliper back on. We got our bolts started through. We'll tighten them up. And I normally just throw the grease cap on last. Throw the wheel back on. Get in it, start it, pump the brakes, check your fluid, especially if you have an overflow issue like mine, and go from there. It looks a lot harder than it is, being the two-wheel drive with the whole one-piece system versus pulling the caliper off, sliding the rotor off, and sliding it all back on in a four-wheel drive. But it's simple, and we'll get it back together and back on the road. There it is, all back together. New rotor, inner and outer bearings, inner seal, new pads. Should be good to go. Thanks for watching. Tune in for more. We should be doing a little bit more stuff with the S10 here soon. And I have a couple other projects going on that I'm pretty excited to start filming. Thank you guys.